This is the Chamber Chat Podcast, the show dedicated to chamber professionals to spark ideas and to get actionable tips and strategies to better serve your members and community. Hello, Chamber Champions. Welcome to Chamber Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Burton, and it's my goal here on the podcast to introduce you to people and ideas to better help you serve your chamber members and your community. Our title sponsor for this episode is Bringing Local Back. Remember when your community could turn to a local TV station or newspaper for the latest updates and affordable ads? Those days may be fading, but the need for local connection remains. That's why we created Bringing Local Back, a game-changing platform that restores local visibility and advertising power to your community. It's more than just tech. It's about driving engagement and creating new revenue for your chamber. Ready to see the future? Visit bringinglocalback.com to schedule your demo today. This is the future of local commerce. Our guest for this episode is Warren Call. Warren is the president and CEO of Traverse Connect, the economic development organization focused on advancing the economic vitality of the Grand Traverse region in Michigan. Traverse Connect hosts the Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance, a coalition of 18 chambers of commerce and economic development organizations representing over 7,500 businesses across Northern Michigan that advocates for economic competitiveness and pro-growth rural business policies. Warren's role is to lead strategy for the organization, advocate for area businesses, represent the region globally, and collaborate with local, state, and national organizations on critical issues related to economic development and regional competitiveness. He holds leadership roles in several public policy initiatives dedicated to economic expansion and was appointed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer to the board of directors for the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. Prior to joining Traverse Connect, Warren served as vice president and regional manager for Huntington National Bank with oversight for investments and private banking across northern Michigan. He holds an MBA in international finance from St. John's University and a BA in history from Michigan State University, where he was the captain of the Michigan State University Alpine ski team. Warren, I'm excited to have you with us today here on Chamber Chat Podcast. I'd love to give you an opportunity to say hello to all the Chamber champions who are out there listening and to share something interesting about yourself so we can all get to know you a little better.
Yeah, hello, Brandon. Thanks for the opportunity and welcome to all the Chamber champions that are out there listening. It's a pleasure to be with you. Warren Call from Traverse Connect in Traverse City, Michigan. Kind of maybe a little bit of background from me. The as you mentioned there in the bio, ski racer. Skiing's kind of my thing. I grew up in a ski family. My parents both worked in the resort business, so we kind of lived there, and so I grew up skiing all the time. I was a high school and college racer. Worked in the ski business for a while. In Utah as well as in Michigan. My brother was also chief of course for World Cup races in Colorado, and so we do a lot of traveling for skiing. We ski a lot here, and then been in a number of avalanches due to my skiing experiences.
Wow. See, I've never been much of a skier. I've been snowboarding a couple times, but nothing, I can't do it. It's just not me. And I see videos of these people that get caught up in avalanches. I'm like, that's why I don't do it. Yeah. So that is interesting though. And definitely an adrenaline rush, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us a little bit more about Traverse Connect. Give us an idea of size, scope of work, staff, budget, that sort of thing to kind of set the stage for our conversation today.
Yeah. So for anyone that's not familiar with Traverse City's northern Michigan, the northern lower Michigan. So there's the Upper Peninsula, the UP as we call it. We're in the northern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan. The pinky of the mitt is basically where we are from a map standpoint, right on Lake Michigan. We're about 4 hours north of Detroit, 6 hours north of Chicago. One of our claims to fame, Good Morning America named us the most beautiful place in America due to Lake Michigan and the dunes and all that kind of stuff. we're Traverse Connect is a hybrid entity. We're both a regional chamber of commerce and a regional economic development organization covering the 5 counties around Traverse City. We're a small town. We're a small region. We're a micropolitan statistical area. So think about 150,000 people in kind of the micropolitan area. Our chamber organization has 1,000 member companies here in our 5 county footprint. We have about a $3 million budget and a staff of 11 here in Traverse City. We have a brand portfolio, as we call it, because again we've expanded beyond being just a traditional chamber. So we have under the Traverse Connect brand, we both have the 5 county Chamber of Commerce services as well as direct economic development for this region. So business attraction, business retention strategies, incentives for business relocation, things like that. We also have what's called the Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance, as you mentioned, and proud to report that it's now 19 chambers of commerce and economic development organizations across the footprint. So that footprint is basically the northern half of the northern lower peninsula, and then all of the upper peninsula of Michigan. So the reason for that is from an advocacy and public policy standpoint, when our team is in Lansing, the capital of Michigan, or in Washington, D.C., we're not speaking on behalf of just Traverse City or just our micropolitan region. We're speaking on behalf of all of northern Michigan with a unified voice. We also kind of going through that brand portfolio further. We've got we house the Traverse City Young Professionals Organization. We also have the Grand Traverse Area Manufacturing Council. So that's a subset entity that's obviously focused on manufacturing. And then we run what's called Michigan's Creative Coast. That's a talent attraction program for our region that is nationally trying to attract talent to northern Michigan. So that's kind of us in a very brief nutshell.
Man, we could do about 8 or 9 podcast episodes on all these different branches that you guys are involved within your brand portfolio. It's fascinating. Yeah. I imagine with the 18th chamber now in the Northern Michigan Alliance that you're probably close to 8,000 businesses or so that are being represented on that advocacy front.
Yeah, our director of government relations was actually just looking at that yesterday. She's put out a updated survey to all those organizations because we do want to make sure. I think we're probably close to or maybe over 8,000 at this point. So, that's a lot of businesses and a lot of organizations that we represent. And again, from an advocacy and public policy standpoint, Northern Michigan, as with many rural areas and rural communities, you can sometimes get lost in the mix from a standpoint of, in Michigan, Detroit speaks pretty loudly. Grand Rapids speaks pretty loudly. We want to make sure that policymakers know that the rural areas of Northern Michigan are important too. And so we have that unified voice to speak on behalf of the rural areas.
I love it. It's a great idea and a great strategy. So our focus for our conversation today is we've titled the episode as Chamber Turnaround. So we're going to dive in deep onto how Traverse Connect became what it is today and kind of that background story to that. And I'm sure a lot of the story can resonate with other chamber leaders across the country as they hear it. But we'll dive in deep into that story and experience as soon as I get back from this quick break.
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Rose.
And we're the founders of At My Community, a mobile app that can be customized to meet the unique needs of your Chamber of Commerce.
When we started At My Community, we envisioned a tool that would help communities thrive by simplifying communication and enhancing engagement. Chambers of Commerce face unique challenges, and we're here to help you tackle them.
At My Community helps the Evergreen Area Chamber of Commerce to create an app that keeps tourists informed even when their office is closed. They provide 24/7 access to local business information, which helps support the local economy and community engagement.
In Rocky Mountain House, we helped the Rocky Chamber create an app with dynamic itineraries and digital resources for tourists, increasing local business engagement. The app has become an essential tool for the community, promoting events and boosting visibility for local merchants.
Today, we empower more than 200 chambers of commerce, campgrounds, and RV resorts to streamline communication, informing members about events, sharing business updates, and providing a digital hub for the community, all in one convenient app.
When you partner with At My Community, our team works closely with you to create an app that meets your chamber's unique needs. As your community grows, our app evolves with you. We are here to ensure you engage effectively with your members and streamline your operations.
Schedule a demo today at atmycommunity.com.
We can't wait to meet you.
Chamber leaders, I know each of you works daily to boost your local economy and take your Chamber of Commerce to the next level. But let's face it, it takes funding, and lots of it. You need to know Resource Development Group. For 3 decades, they have been the premier economic development fundraising consulting firm dedicated to helping chambers of commerce and economic development organizations like yours thrive across the United States. Their expert team specializes in crafting customized fundraising strategies that drive tangible results so you'll be able to fully implement your community advancement and economic development strategies. Imagine having a partner who strives to understand your community's unique needs, brings national best practices to bear, and has the proven experience to secure millions of dollars in funding. Resource Development Group has successfully guided countless chambers of commerce in creating vibrant, sustainable economies. With their comprehensive suite of services, from campaign planning and execution to investor engagement management to best practice studies, RDG takes the guesswork out of fundraising. You'll receive personalized support and innovative solutions that make a real impact. Don't just take my word for it. Chambers of Commerce and EDO executives nationwide have praised RDG for their dedication, professionalism, and impressive track record of raising over $2 billion for their clients. Ready to see what Resource Development Group can do for your chamber? Visit them at rdgfundraising.com to learn more. Elevate your community, strengthen your chamber, and unlock new possibilities with Resource Development Group by your side. They build organizations that build communities. All right, Warren, we're back. So tell us, what is the background? What's the story on Traverse Connect? How did it come to be, and this whole idea of chamber turnaround? I think it's safe to assume that things maybe weren't as ideal, and then things had to happen to to get it on track to where it is today.
Yeah, it's interesting, Brandon, because what we face here in the Grand Traverse region, the Traverse City area, is unlike a lot of Michigan, or actually a lot of the kind of the industrial upper Midwest Great Lakes region. We're actually growing. We have really been on a pretty good trajectory from a growth standpoint for a while. And what we needed was we had a lot of great institutions and a lot of great initiatives that were well intentioned and they were well meaning, and what they weren't is they weren't modernized for our environment. So what we really needed to do is we needed to take kind of that big picture of Chamber of Commerce services, economic development, and we needed to modernize our approach for the region. And what that really related to was we had a lot of organizations that were doing good things, but a lot of it was siloed. So there wasn't a lot of coordination across some initiatives. There wasn't full coordination across the region. And so what we looked at was an opportunity to reimagine what business support services in kind of its most general sense looked like in our region. And it became frankly, a wholesale reconstruction of our organization and of the approach to economic development and Chamber of Commerce services for the entire region. So, from a background standpoint, it really started back in probably 2016, 2017. There was a number of initiatives that had kind of gone by the wayside. So, a kind of an older traditional public sector, county-led economic development corporation had gone dormant and didn't have a lot of operations in it. at the same time, 100-plus-year-old regional chamber of commerce, I wouldn't say certainly was still functioning and well functioning, but it was pretty traditional, and it was perhaps even a little bit stale in its approach.
I've heard that before from chambers that have been around a long time. Yeah.
Right. And fantastic legacy, very successful legacy, but needed a refresh, basically.
Yeah.
And then we had a number of newer initiatives that were important. So especially in innovation and technology. So a new tech incubator had been stood up, a couple of other good initiatives, but they were in their own silos and not plugged into some of the other things that were going on. So a number of us, and I should probably point out that I have no background in economic development or Chamber of Commerce services. So back at this point, I was actually working in the finance industry for a national bank. I was overseeing their Northern Michigan operations. So I was involved in these things, but as a volunteer board member.
Yeah.
So I was a volunteer board member on the Economic Development Corporation and on the Technology Incubator, and I was involved in one of the committees through the chamber, and there was things like that. But so we were working as a community to re-envision what economic development and Chamber of Commerce services should look like. And there was a couple of retirements at some of these different organizations. And so we looked at that as an opportunity to kind of rethink what everything should look like. And at that point, I got asked by some of the people that, they said, well, great, but if we're going to reconstitute everything, we want you to move from being a board member to being the guy in the chair. So I didn't expect to be in that role, but that's how it happened.
It sounds like maybe you spoke too much in these board meetings.
I think so. I think I shared my opinion a few too many times, right? So what we ended up doing is the county's Economic Development Corporation was reformatted with new board members. I was again at that point the volunteer chair of that organization when we reconstituted it. And what we did is we built a strategic plan for rebuilding everything. And so that process happened through 2017, 2018. And then in 2019, I stepped into this role at Traverse Connect, which at that point was a kind of a community development organization that hadn't really found its footing. And so then my job was to work with a consultant that we had hired and build a strategic plan, not just for my organization, but for the entire region. So this really was a soup to nuts kind of approach. We had community-wide forums. We had a listening tour. We had a steering committee made up of key leaders from business, industry, nonprofits from across the region. Kind of, as I called it, that was our big shots group, right? We had prominent CEOs and other leaders who, have influence. And what we ended up doing is through those public listening tours, those the kind of the roadshow as it was, the industry forums that we brought together the manufacturers, and we brought together the healthcare providers, and we all these things. We ended up basically opening the hood, ripping everything out, and putting it all back together again in a new structure. So we merged Traverse Connect and the Traverse City Area Chamber of Commerce together into one entity that's now called Traverse Connect. We spun off a couple of subsidiaries that were no longer relevant, and we then merged in over time. We merged in some of these other things. We expanded that Chamber Alliance. It had gone, we went from, I think, 12 now up to 19 members. We also brought in and merged the Grand Traverse Area Manufacturing Council as now a subsidiary of our organization. And really what it was we took all these outdated structures, and we were trying to address the fact that we had growth in the region, which was positive, but we also had a lot of growth challenges. So we're a very popular destination for tourism. We're a popular destination for second homes. And those are very valuable aspects of our economy, but they're not our only aspects of our economy. We have actually a lot of technology. We have a lot of advanced manufacturing. We actually have more employment in manufacturing than Michigan's average. And for anyone that knows Michigan, there's a lot of manufacturing.
That says
right?
a lot.
Right. So people think of us as a great place for vacations and beaches and cherry pie. But what they don't realize is that there's also a lot of other things going on in manufacturing, in technology, in agriculture. So advanced value-added agriculture, right? If your kids ever eat go-go squeeze, applesauce in the packet, that's made right here in a very massive facility here. Materne, the French company that has their location here. We make a lot of wine that gets shipped all over the world, et cetera. So we've got a lot of things beyond tourism and second home ownership, which are important to us. But one of the challenges there is we have a high cost of living because so many people want to either be here part of the time or be here, for vacation, et cetera. So we have workforce challenges. So while our population was growing, our working age population was declining.
Yeah.
So 35 to 49-year-olds, that core working age population, the people that run businesses, that, teach school, that have kids in the school system, that, sit on nonprofit boards, that kind of your core working age population, that had declined by 7% between 2010 and 2019.
Wow.
So you can't have a vibrant year-round economy and community if you don't have the people that are here year-round working and, getting their kids into snow pants and out to school the next day, right? You've got to have that year-round population. So that was a wake-up call to our region that we needed to do something. And so that was kind of all of the work we did to institute a new structure and develop a new strategic plan was focused on the fact that we need to be a year-round economy. So, and I can go into more detail about kind of some of the key highlights of that, but I wanted to pause and see if
I think that's important to dive into some of those key highlights. I'm always curious as well when there's restructuring like this that goes on as to it. And you gave a great background about you being sitting on the two boards and ideas, bubbling up. But, when you put the, rubber to the road to have the traction to actually implement these changes, it can be kind of sticky, when you're dealing with leadership with other organizations, multiple boards. So as you talk to your next point, if you can try to work some of that into about the approach and for a chamber listening, not everybody's has that perfect timing where everything aligns to just make it happen, but the vision is there of this is the direction our community needs to go. So if you can kind of speak to that a little bit too, as you in your response.
Yeah, and there's a lot there, but certainly I think the key things here that we learned were that over communication, and I just mean complete over communication, and repeating the reasons why we're doing this were really key aspects of our approach. I think because what we found was that people fear change.
Yes.
And organizations fear change. But really, when it comes down to it, there's actually not a fear of change. They fear change because they fear loss. People equate change with loss. They think that the change you're making is going to result in some kind of loss for them. And so we had to really do our homework to show that this change was not going to result in loss. It was going to result in gain for the community.
That's a great framing. I like that. Yeah.
So really thinking about, again, what you need when you're going to implement big change like this, especially with 100-plus-year organizations and, that legacy of the Chamber of Commerce and things like that, you've got to show that you're respecting and building on that legacy and enhancing what it's going to do going forward, not taking away from it. So part of that is, again, like I said, over communicating. Part of that is having a clear enemy. So again, from our perspective, that clear enemy was we lost 10% of the working age population between 2010 and 2019, right? I think I said 7% before, but it was actually 10%. We lost 10% of that working age population in that time period. That got people's attention, and that was the enemy. And we were able to focus our efforts around that enemy. Okay. That allowed organizations to really work together. It allowed, we had a business leader meeting with a county commissioner, meeting with a nonprofit, hospital leader. All of them could agree that if you lose your working age population, you're in trouble. So that focused everyone's mind, and it allowed us to do a couple of key things. Number one, I think it helped everybody kind of check their ego at the door, because it wasn't about their organization or their project. It was about defeating that enemy. And then it also allowed us, I think, some latitude to what we ended up calling slaughtering some sacred cows.
It's important. Yeah.
Because everyone realized that if we were going to address this issue of losing the working age population, we had to come up with some new solutions. So that's kind of the framing that helped us. I also think it was important that we did a lot of listening first. So we formed that kind of what I call the big shots group, the key leaders across the community, as a steering committee, people that are trusted across business, industry, nonprofit, et cetera. That helped. Then that steering committee was the one that gave me direction and gave our consultants direction. And then we did these community-wide forums. We did the listening tour. We did the workshops that were open to everyone. So we really, we incorporated everyone's feedback. And I think it's important to do that regardless of what you're doing. But here's the thing you got to think about, and I think chamber professionals know this: you're never going to make everybody happy.
Right.
So that our new solution, our new structure, our new strategic plan, I think it's well done. But of course, there's going to be people that are going to not like some aspect of it, right? But being able to say, we asked everyone for their opinion was really important, right? Even if we didn't incorporate their opinion, maybe they didn't like the final product, but we asked everybody. Nobody was unasked. Everyone got tired of hearing my talking points because I repeated them so many times, and our steering committee repeated them so many times. But at least everyone felt like they were heard.
It goes back to that over communication, and nobody can say, I didn't know this was happening, right? You're talking about it, and you're not catching them by surprise.
Right. So that's what resulted in, for example, the decision to have a hybrid structure. Our leading private sector businesses were really tired of the chamber asking them for money and sponsorship and dues, and then the Economic Development Corporation trying to get some funding, and then the tech incubator, and blah, 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 blah. So, one entity that has a really, clear mandate. Now, my private sector business leaders can say, I'm writing a check to Traverse Connect to do this, this, and this, right? So that became really clear. And so it gave us focus and clarity too. And we were really intentional, and the end result of that hybrid structure and our strategic plan outlined exactly where we were going to lead, where we were going to support, and where we weren't going to get involved. So our focus became, Traverse Connect our mission is to look at the economic vitality, strengthen the economic vitality of this region by growing family-sustaining careers. So family-sustaining careers, year-round, you can afford to live here, you can afford to put your kids in childcare, et cetera, you can afford a house. A family-sustaining career is kind of the North Star. The way we do that in our 3 pillars of primary focus is the economic competitiveness of the region, number 1. strengthening that. Number 2, direct support for businesses. Number 3, talent. Making sure we've got talent attraction, development, and that continuum of talent development. Then we were really specific about where we're going to support. We support the technology incubator in early stage company development. We're not the leader in early stage. They're the leader. We support them. We're not the leader in housing development, but there's an entity called Housing North. They're the leader in housing development. We support their efforts. So we're really clear about, some of those. There's community development. So some of the kind of more societal, environmental things.
Yeah.
We're not the leader in that, but we support the community development coalition that is the leader in that.
Okay. This is all super fascinating, and I could see it's a big undertaking as well, but being able to align the needs within the community to be able to say what's important, how do we want to advance the future going forward. You say create these family sustaining careers. Can you talk a little bit about some of the outcomes that you're seeing from these changes? How is the temperature changed? How's the mood changed in the community by implementing this?
Well, certainly, again, as chamber professionals know, you're never going to make everybody happy. So there's still the same things that we always have, right? We still have challenges with elected officials not agreeing with each other and different priorities, and always that tension between managing appropriate growth versus maintaining our character and our charm of our communities. Those are always things that continue to be items of debate. But I think where there's really clear success there's probably 3 things I would touch on that have really been clear success. First of those is under that banner of the Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance, the opportunity to leverage the connection between economic development and public policy. Yeah. That's been really helpful for us across all of Northern Michigan, so that the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and other kind of policy leaders know what our priorities are, and they know that we're focused on it. They know that we need funding for our initiatives. They know that when we're out there trying to recruit an advanced manufacturing company to come to Northern Michigan, they know that it's part of a concerted strategy. So I think that was one really big win. Especially since, again, we're a fantastic place to vacation. We're a fantastic place for second homes. And so a lot of policy leaders downstate Michigan, that's what they think of when they think of Traverse City. And that's great. We want them to continue to think about that, and that to continue to be a strong part of our economy. But also, we're a great place for an advanced manufacturing entity to relocate. So that's one thing. The second thing is it's allowed us to leverage some unique attributes of our community to focus on cluster development, industry cluster development. We're not going to be a place that Ford or GM are going to set up a huge production facility. That's not the right fit for us. That's the right fit for downstate Michigan. The right fit for us from a cluster development is freshwater research and innovation. We're on Lake Michigan. We're a great place for research and development as it relates to water technologies, marine technologies, things like that. We're a great place for value-added agriculture, as I mentioned. We're a great place for testing and deployment of drone technologies. Our local college is a leader in the Midwest for drone technologies, and the way that drone technologies need to be developed for rural communities. Think of agricultural uses. Think of rural healthcare delivery, both with drones and with telemedicine. Those are things that are unique to our region. So we're leveraging our unique things to develop these industry clusters in rural health, in drone deployment, in marine technologies, to again grow family sustaining careers. Right? We want if some company is going to build the next advanced underwater drone research product. We want that to be done here, right? Because this is a good place to do it. And then the final thing I would touch on is Michigan's Creative Coast, our talent attraction initiative. I think we had a good plan and we built a good program. We also got really lucky, Brandon, because we built this nationally focused talent attraction brand, and it went live about 3 weeks before the pandemic hit.
Wow.
And one of our big initiatives as part of that was, with remote work and technology, if you can work anywhere, why wouldn't you want to work here? And our timing could not have been better, because all of a sudden the world realized they could do things from anywhere. And it's been a huge growth for us. We've been able to attract entrepreneurs, remote workers, technology, biopharmaceutical entities. It's just been phenomenal from a standpoint of attracting talent and attracting entrepreneurs.
That is huge. I appreciate you touching on those three areas. And when you're talking about economic development, leveraging, working with the public policy, the thought came to me, it used to be that the media kept government in check and made sure that, trying to keep them honest, we'll say.
Right.
But now I see that shift being more with chambers and economic development on the advocacy front to keep governments in check. And if they know that you've got your eye on these, policies that affect business, then it's hard to get something past a group, of 18 chambers that are, form this alliance to make sure that business is being protected and it's a fertile place for business to grow and thrive. So
Absolutely.
These are great areas, great successes that are coming out of this, and I feel like in the format that we have for this podcast, we might have bitten off a little more than we could chew, because I could listen to you for a couple hours, going in depth with all of these different aspects and the wins that are coming out of this. But I appreciate you being able to try to condense this to work with this format and kind of give a glimpse of what's possible as you align resources and ideas and getting the stakeholders involved and really convening them all together to create a good cause going forward in your community and region. As we start to wrap things up here, I wanted to see if there's any tip or action item that you would share with the chamber who's wanting to take their organization up to the next level. What would you suggest for them?
What I learned in this process, Brandon, was I think the key thing is leverage. Chamber leaders have way more leverage than a lot of them they realize or that they use. And I think chambers and chamber leaders oftentimes are kind of the key servant of the community. And that's an important role, but I think it's important to remember that it's a servant leader role. And I think there's an opportunity to have a bit more swagger in your community and take the initiative, be bold, be authentic, but also be the authority, because the chamber knows more of what's going on than most other people in the region.
Yes.
Fill the vacuum of leadership, and really leverage that. And I think you can do that with your staff. I think you can do that with your board, your community, obviously elected officials. So that's what I would say. And I think the best way to do that is to quantify things. And so metrics and quantifying helps you to leverage your authority.
I like that. Having the data to back up what you're trying to accomplish. And I love that word leverage too. And it brings power quite literally. As you apply a force with leverage, you're able to do a lot more than what you can do on your own.
Absolutely.
As we look to the future of chambers of commerce, how do you see the future of chambers and their purpose going forward?
I think it's going to be really interesting. I think that, as an industry, as everyone knows, that struggle for member retention, I think is always going to be there. And we don't need to get into all the kind of the traditional things about, retention and non-dues revenue and all that kind of stuff. But the key thing is the chamber was always thought of as the authority traditionally on business issues. Then the internet comes along and business leaders feel like they can kind of get information from other sources, so they don't necessarily need to be involved in the chamber. They don't need to be members. I think that's been a struggle over the last, 20 years. I think maybe, and I don't know for sure, but maybe as the internet becomes less of an information source and more of just a confusing mix of everyone's opinion, maybe there's a need again for kind of that trusted authority, that authentic trusted authority. And I would love to see chambers and economic development organizations fill that role, because I think it could be kind of a full circle thing where, there's a million websites and you really don't know what's going on. So you might need to just go talk to your local or regional chamber to figure out what's really going on with business issues.
Yeah, I like that. I've never thought of it in that context before, but I like that. It gives you something to think about and see that full circle come back around.
Right.
Well, Warren, for those listening who may want to reach out and learn more about how things have developed there at Traverse Connect, what would be the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
I'm 100% against email. I think it's a waste of time. There's actually a really good book called World Without Email. If you haven't read it, you should. My cell phone, 231-651-9174.
All right. We'll get that in our show notes for this episode to make it easy for people to reach out and connect with you. But Warren, this has been great having you on, and thank you for, kind of pulling back the curtain and showing what took place to create Traverse Connect and aligning all those desires, interests, abilities to be able to bring them in under one roof, and also shed off some of those sacred cows that may weigh you down a little bit.
Right.
This is a great exercise that probably every chamber needs to go through on some, regular basis, maybe not to the same extent, but to really, see what the purpose is and what's driving them. But thank you for sharing your experiences with us today. This has been fantastic, and I really appreciate it.
My appreciation to you, Brandon. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
If you are a chamber professional, please subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. When you subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast, new episodes will show up in your podcast app each week as they are released. If you're finding value in this podcast, please leave us a rating and a review in iTunes. But most importantly, please share Chamber Chat Podcast with your colleagues that are in the industry.